Let me start recording. So yeah, strong currency means currency values going up, and weak currency means currency values going down. Like sometimes some countries prefer to keep their currency value high. Other countries may prefer to keep their currency value low. So today's discussion is all about what are the pros and cons of having strong versus weak currency. Uh, and then like sometimes situations change, and sometimes you may devalue your currency. Sometimes situations change. Sometimes you may revalue your currency. We'll we'll see what are the pros and cons of that as well. So, what are the first advantage of having a high exchange rate? We say this that keeping a high exchange rate can keep inflation under control. Okay, so let's look at how does that happen. So, guys, if the exchange rate is going up or is stronger, right? Exports become expensive, imports become cheaper, and that would mean X minus M goes down, which would mean AD will fall, which would mean lower demand pull inflation. Isn't that true? The demand pull inflation will be low because AD is falling. At the same time, guys, because imports are becoming cheaper, as PM is going down, we also know this that imports are becoming cheaper, which would mean key inputs like oil, etc., will become cheaper, and that would mean basically aggregate supply will rise, which would basically means price level will fall, right? So AD will either AD falls, price level falls, which basically means lower even cost push inflation. So strong exchange rate can lead to lower inflation, both demand side and cost side. So this becomes an advantage for an economy. So whenever Pakistan, a good example of Pakistan is whenever Pakistan's currency depreciate or lose value against dollar, it actually ends up causing inflation in our country. And the reason is simply because we are an import focused economy rather than export driven economy. Ideally, when the exchange rate goes down, your exports become cheaper. But in Pakistan's case, it hurts more than helps in our case uh, because of our exchange rate going down, we end up causing having more inflation in the economy. So strong exchange rate, low inflation is the first important point that we need to focus on. Any questions about this? Yeah, really straightforward. So remember, this is a very key point that remember exchange rate and inflation has a strong relationship as well. So if the value of the exchange rate is high, then the price of finished imported goods will be low. In addition, the price of raw materials components will be low, causing lower, prices for consumer. Secondly, guys, because exchange rate is high or exchange rate goes up, imports become cheaper, which can also means cheaper imported goods can be bought, or rather than saying cheaper, I say more imported goods can be bought. More imported goods can be bought, and that is good news for us because that could mean standard of living can go up. People can buy more imported cars, people can buy more imported sort of goods and services, people can travel abroad because their exchange rate is strong, and so on and so forth. That could mean standard of living can go up for them. Makes sense. So second important point is this that we argue this that it can also lead to higher standard of living for people because they're buying more imported goods. Now, because your exchange rate is going up, another argument we make is this that exports become expensive. Now, when the exports become expensive and imports become cheaper, we're also, guys, um, uh, making an argument is that now if you want to be competitive in the international market, right? If you want to stay competitive in the international market, what do you need to do? And the answer is this that domestic producers as well as exporters will try to lower their costs further. Yeah, they need to become more competitive, and that could mean basically more efficiency. We can argue this that if exports are becoming expensive and imports are becoming cheaper, domestic producers will be like, hey, imports are becoming cheaper, we need to lower our price, so we need to lower our costs. Exports are becoming expensive, we need to become more competitive, we need to lower our costs. Make sense? So both exporters and domestic producers will try to sort of become more efficient. Lastly, guys, any questions about this? Have you copied this? Okay. Lastly, guys, we also argue this that the terms of trade will improve. What is terms of trade? Remember, terms of trade formula was PX over PM. So if you look at PX, when the exchange rate goes up, because exports become expensive and imports become cheaper, PX is going up, PM is going down, so terms of trade will go up. Now, terms of trade going up stand alone may not really be an advantage, but think about one more thing, guys. What if your goods are inelastic? What if my exports are inelastic? What will that do, guys? If exports are inelastic, when the price of exports go up, quantity of exports will fall by much less if inelastic. Give me an example of an inelastic, a country that might be making inelastic goods. So when the exchange rate goes up, they may not see the demand to go down, yet they may see uh, their export revenue to go up. Any example that can come to our mind? China is making more elastic goods. Germany. Germany is an example of making inelastic goods. German cars are preferred over many other cars in the world. They are regarded as high quality because of their build and so on. So we could argue this that despite exports prices going up because of exchange rate appreciating, they might not see a loss of export revenue because quantity will fall by much less, and that's why they will be still be able to achieve a lot more. Got it? Does that make sense? Any questions about this? So, guys, these are the 4 points that comes to our mind when it comes to what are the advantages of having a strong exchange rate or exchange rate appreciation. And the summary of this is this that if your goods are inelastic, it's actually really good for you to have a higher or a stronger exchange rate. May not work well if the goods are inelastic. Also, it can make imports cheaper, which can control inflation and can also result in standard of living to go up. What are the possible disadvantages of having a high exchange rate? Well, number one is this that when the exchange rate goes up, because exports are becoming uh, expensive, the problem that will happen would be that export industries will suffer. Why? Because they need to do, and like right now the exchange rate in Pakistan is becoming stronger recently. If you look at last few months, and exporters are not happy. They are saying that like we're exporting, and now we need to every time the exchange rate goes up, they lose their competitiveness, and then they need to either cut down on their profits to remain competitive, which means basically lower the price, or they try to find out ways to become efficient. And there isn't really efficiency isn't really easy to achieve right away. It's a long term process. So every time this happens, where the exchange rate goes up, exports become expensive, and the exporter will suffer in terms of demand for their goods. And that basically means, like if you look at X minus M will go down, and at least that means AD will go down, and basically also unemployment can go up as GDP will fall. So if you're a export led country, like you might see this to be bad news for you whenever this happens. Again, I'm considering you might have an elastic demand rather than an inelastic demand. If you have an inelastic demand, ultimately export revenue will go up for you. Make sense? Are we going to move on? Vasu, you said petrol when you said petrol 4 minutes ago, so maybe it was for an older argument. I just saw this message. Are we going to move on? Any questions about this? Another point we make about having sort of a strong exchange rate, it causes a damage to domestic industries. Why? Because when the exchange rate goes up, right? We know this that imports are becoming cheaper. So domestic producers will suffer in terms of lower demand. So that's another challenge that happens. The domestic producers are also suffering. So guys, that would mean basically because imports will go up, domestic consumption is going to fall, which will further cause unemployment to go up as GDP falls. Yeah, so a lot of domestic consumers will decide to consume foreign goods, and that is bad news. Thirdly, guys, something which we'll see in detail in the next chapter, because of exchange rate going up, we know this X minus M will fall, and this will run into what we call a current account deficit. And current account deficit, basically, if it's a one-time current account deficit, it's not a problem. But if it's a sustained current account deficit, if it's a long-term current account deficit, why is that problematic, guys? Because that would mean our reserves may run out. Reserves may run out. And we run into issues of, for example, borrowing from abroad. And it's also a sign of a weak economy. Make sense? Are we good? Any questions about all that we've discussed? Now, what are the arguments? Sometimes they say, what are the arguments for weak currency? So these are all the reverse will happen for the weak currency, of course. If I'm making an argument for weak currency, I'll say that export industries will benefit, domestic industries will benefit, current account will run into a surplus, which means strong foreign reserves and so on. However, when you look at inflation will be high, less imports will be bought, so lower standard of living, terms of trade will worsen, and also exporters may become complacent because they may not strive for efficiency when they know that the exchange rate is in their favor. Make sense? So you can make a counter argument for all this when you're writing an argument for weak currency. Make sense, guys? So you may need to remember that as well. Moving on, I want to talk about devaluation. What is devaluation? When you are purposely trying to lower the value of the currency in a fixed exchange rate regime. If you're in a fixed exchange rate regime, or if you're in a managed even regime, devaluation means when we are purposely trying to lower the value of exchange rate, and you lower the value of exchange rate. Why? Because you know this, when the exports become cheaper, imports become expensive, X minus M will go up. So your purpose will be basically to make the X minus M of the country to go up, and that rise in the X minus M will be good because that will result in more GDP, more lower unemployment, and so on, right? So in the case of a country operating under a fixed exchange rate regime, it can resort to devaluation, which will reduce the level of the exchange rate. Exports should become less expensive and imports should become more expensive. And depending on how responsive domestic industries are, basically how elastic and foreign consumers are to the price changes, this should result in an improvement in the current account as export revenue will go up and import revenue will fall. Now, what are the conditions for devaluation to be successful? You understand this, that devaluation can never be, it cannot be successful for all countries. Some countries may end up suffering when devaluation happens. What are the possible reasons for that? Number one, there is no retaliation from other countries. What if we devalue and other country also devalue in return? If we both devalue, then ultimately the net effect will not be anything. So for devaluation to work, number one, there should be no retaliation from other countries. So other countries should not retaliate by lowering their price. That's the first thing. If they retaliate in return, we will not be able to see the x minus m to go up. In order for x minus m to go up, so no retaliation, number one. Also, we assume that there should not be any import controls from other countries. This one and two is kind of like the same point, because you can retaliate by putting either import controls, or you can retaliate by actually devaluing the currency as well. So that could basically result in us to not see any benefit. Number one. Number three, guys, is the Marshall Lerner condition. And I want to explain the Marshall Lerner condition. According to these guys, Marshall and Lerner, they came up with this idea that in order for devaluation to be successful, PED of exports plus PED of imports, right? Or rather, I should write it in another color. PED of exports plus PED of imports, the sum should be greater than 1. What do we mean by, let's say this is 0.4. Is it elastic or inelastic? Thank you very much. For a moment, I was having a mini heart attack. So yeah, inelastic. 0.4 means less than 1, means being inelastic. If it's inelastic, will devaluation work? No. But what if this was like 0.7? This is also inelastic, which means devaluation should not work. But if the sum is greater than 1, which is the case here, this is 1.1, apparently the devaluation will become successful. As long as the sum is greater than 1, individually they might be inelastic. By the way, if it's inelastic, just to let you know, price goes up. If it's inelastic, quantity will fall by little, by much less, right? And that would mean revenue will rise. But if you're making devaluation to happen, which means exchange rate goes down, exports become cheaper, which means quantity of exports should go up. But if it's inelastic, should not go up by much more. But we say this, if the Marshall-Lerner condition is true, as long as the Marshall-Lerner condition is true, being inelastic alone may not be a problem as long as the sum is greater than 1. So according to the Marshall-Lerner condition, as long as the sum of elasticity of demand for exports and imports is greater than 1, and also they say this, one more thing. Number two, they say this, that number one, the sum should be greater than 1. Number two is this, what if both of them are elastic? Then they argue this, if both of them are elastic, then the devaluation required will be not that much. A little devaluation can have a significant impact because your goods are very elastic. So the larger the value of PED of X and M, the smaller the requirement for devaluation for getting your desired result, number one. Number two is this, that as long as the sum is greater than 1, the devaluation will work. What if the sum was like this, guys? What if the sum was like 0.3 plus 0.6? Will devaluation work? No, it won't work. It won't make my X minus M go up. Remember, the goal is for X minus M to go up. If you want the X minus M to go up, at least the sum should be greater than 1. That's the condition that it will make it happen. So according to the Marshall-Lerner condition is a rule that tells us that it's a rule that tells us that how successful a depreciation or devaluation of a country of a currency exchange rate will be as a means to improve a current account deficit in the balance of payment. The condition says that reducing the value of the exchange rate will only be successful if the total value of the PED of X plus PED of M is greater than 1. The more elastic is the demand for exports and imports, the lower will be the value of depreciation necessary to bring about a change in the balance of payment. So as long as, guys, as long as the sum is greater than 1 of exports and import elasticity, then devaluation will be successful. So that's what they argue. Any questions, guys, before we move on? Okay, this brings us to J-curve. J-curve, if you look at this, what is J-curve telling us? This is a J-curve which tells us that if you have a current account balance here, so look at this. This is current account surplus. As long as if this is X minus M, right? X minus M is positive, you are running into a current account surplus. X minus M is deficit, right? And this is time. What does this tell us? This that uh, with time you can see you are right now in a current account deficit. Are you all with me? Let's say we are here right now. Let's say this is uh, for the first month. Okay, I realize that we are in a current account deficit, and the country decides to bring the exchange rate down. What will happen in the short run versus long run? Because time has lapsed. So this is short run versus long run. Can somebody tell me what is happening with the short run versus long run? Short run, louder, louder. X minus M is actually going down further. And in the long run, in other words, can I say it gets worse before it gets better? You know, it gets worse before it gets better, because in the short run you may see current account to worsen, but in the long run you may see an impact to happen. Which means if Pakistan devalue the currency, hoping X minus M to go up, will you see quick gains or will you see gains in a little while? In a little while. Why is that so? Why do you feel that there could be a possibility that the gains only happen in the long run but not in the short run? Very good. In the short run, it's very difficult for people to switch, right? So it's very ill-lasting in the short run. All goods are ill-lasting in the short run. We said in the long run they will be lasting because people may find substitutes. So also, let's say if I've done a contract with Adam's company and I'm importing, for example, inputs from him. In the short run, I might have done a 3-month agreement with him, but in the long run, I'll be signing up a new agreement on a new exchange rate. Makes sense? Because short-run agreements are done and because short-run elasticities are low, you might see the Marshall-Lerner condition to be not true. But in the long run, you might see this to happen and therefore current account deficit to improve. So this is exactly what J-curve says this, that according to J-curve, the reasons, where is my text? Yeah, a fall in the exchange rate will actually worsen the balance of payment deficit before it starts to improve it. This is known as the J-curve effect, and the figure above shows what happens to a current account deficit over time when the exchange rate is devalued or depreciated. The reasons are, so why does it become better in the long run? Well, number one, many countries need to import raw materials, and when such inputs like oil to produce their exports, with a falling exchange rate, they must pay more for such items. So your imports become expensive. In the long run, what happens is you find cheaper substitutes. You do new contracts, you find cheaper substitutes, which may improve your export prices. That's the first reason. The second reason, guys, is just that the demand for exports and imports also tend to be inelastic in the short run. Consumers don't find it easy to switch, and producers don't find it easy to switch. And in the long run, when they are able to switch, then they will basically enjoy the benefits of devaluation. So, with time, consumers may react to devaluation and change the consumption pattern. Domestic consumers will reduce imports, and foreign consumers will increase demand for exports, ultimately resulting in the balance of payment to improve. Does that make sense, guys? So, balance of payment actually goes up in the long run. So, devaluation, if you want devaluation to be successful, number one, you don't want any retaliation, you don't want any import controls, you want the Marshall-Lerner conditions to be true, and lastly, you want the effect, you will see the effect in the long run rather than short run, because in the long run, X minus M goes up, while in the short run, it may not. Make sense? Are we good? Okay, guys, in terms of our syllabus, just a quick sort of discussion of where we are. Today is Thursday. We have one more week to go. I want to keep one extra class, which I will do Saturday. Okay. So Raza will find me a slot. So Raza, find me a slot for AS for Saturday. Okay. So we'll keep a class on Saturday. I'm going to start off with finishing this types of exchange rate, but basically my goal will be macroeconomic policies. So I'm going to do that class. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a class on macroeconomic policies. I'm going to skip this last discussion of exchange rate, which I'll pick up later on. It's just like a 5-minute discussion, but I want to basically do my policies class on Saturday. A longer class, 1.5 hour class. Try to sort of do a significant work. Policies will not come in your mocks. Okay. So whatever we've done till exchange rate will come in your mocks, but policies will not come in your mocks. We are categorically putting policies not in your syllabus. So you have a week to only focus on exchange rate and below. Remember, for your mocks, it's important to prepare micro and macro both. Your macro data response is very likely to be from, in fact, it is from macro. And your essay questions will be 2 micro, 1 macro. Okay, so two micro, 1 macro. So you have to understand that. We can try doing more data response questions, or Sir Raza can also help you with that. He can focus on next week on data responses only. Okay, this week, just focus on Sir Raza. Just focus on data responses so that they're comfortable with that. So Sir Raza will, and Sir Raza only macro data responses. Only macro data responses, because we gave him macro data responses. So, but as MCQs will be 15 micro or 16 micro, something like that, 15, 16 macro depending. So it's like, it's not an even split, but 15, 15. So you've got to be prepared for everything in that context, barring policies, of course. Policies, we'll try to avoid policies in the MCQs as well. So we'll do that. Okay. Have a good one, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.